First speaker will be Seleznev Nikolai.
Технических наук, профессор Маам.
He's a professor at the International Academy of Architecture.
Мировой опыт применения по возведению зданий и
His
сооружений.
topic is world experience in the construction of buildings and structures in the Arctic zone. Thank you.
Приветствую всех участников.
I want to say hello to the forum.
Как бы в ранний час, а у вас в обеде.
So in Moscow right now it's early morning, but right now you have lunchtime, and let's start our job. So when I was preparing this report, it was asked by the Trade Palace,
которая была посвящена полностью арктической.
which was dedicated to the Arctic theme.
Рассмотрение технологий лучших и доступных российских технологий.
With the special view on the Russian technologies that are available today.
Вы знаете, что он когда-то руководил стройкой БАМа, герой социалистического труда. Ну, вот я сказал, что я буду выступать обязательно и подготовил вот такую доклад.
I wanted to speak on this report today. It'll be pretty short. So please show up the presentation.
Возможность есть такая? Я просил, чтобы она была. Алло, организаторы.
Да, сейчас вот подключают.
Коллеги.
Все.
Да, потому что там, да, я буду говорить достаточно.
I will speak on.
Немного, а говорить я буду комментировать достаточно много.
I will be commenting on this topic a lot.
Ага, и сразу второй файл. Сразу можно второй файл показать. Спасибо. Вот я представлю вам, что я
present this. Me personally, I'm from the north too. I worked for 18 years in Novy Urengoy on the construction job, and in the governmental job for the 10 years too. I will speak mostly from my experience.
Дело в том, что когда я начал просматривать
when I started to research the international experience,
что этот опыт самый большой и самый
my topic. So I thought that we have the best one. There is no country in the world
арктическая зона, у нас официальные
which
данные,
has so much territory in the Arctic zone.
как в Российской Федерации. И естественно освоение этих
and of course the exploration of this territory
помните, он завоевал
started in old times when Ivan the Fourth was the Tsar. So we have so our experience is the biggest one in the world. But the experience in the industrial sphere, in mining territory,
есть у нас депутатскую.
It's pretty good too because we have stations in Norilsk and Deputatsky too.
Я хочу сказать, что
I
это.
wanted to say that this trend will be set for the next 100 years.
Там живете, вы это тоже понимаете.
We understand this in Moscow, and you who live there understand it too.
Сибирью.
Because Russia will grow in Siberia. Let's see the first option. The first criteria is the profitability.
Которые надо применять в районах арктической зоны.
Because we have the technology of this to use it in Arctic territory.
Если какая-то из них лучше, то ее следует и применять. И не допускать иные факторы для обустройства там. Ну, к примеру, там панельное домостроение.
Like an example of the panel house building.
Экономический фактор его применения, особенно
like as an economic factor.
Никаких
it does not uh, it does not have mostly good uh, showings. And the second aspect
Надо сказать, каждый из них имеет
that is
колоссальное...
pretty important too, but all of them are important as well,
А их всего 10 у меня. Имеет колоссальную значимость. И
and
если
we're gonna have 10 of them.
значит, эта технология, материалы и оборудование применяться в данном месте у нас в арктической зоне не могут. Экологично. Мы
So
говорим...
the environmental friendliness.
Я сам видел,
And
как страдает экология.
personally, I saw how the ecology was harmed
Или еще что-нибудь.
from
Тундра
the
потом
industrialization of the north.
восстанавливаться после этих бороз в летний период. Зимой-то она переносит, а экологические части, как мы знаем, тундровики, они ездят на санях и зимой и летом, и ничего не нарушают, и живут тысячелетия. Это как один из примеров, а таких примеров можно приводить тысячи. Поэтому
like one of an example of the environmental friendliness is
третий
the
показатель.
biggest priority. And the third aspect is energy efficiency.
У нас есть
We
постановление.
have a lot of laws.
У нас есть на этот счет
We have the government report.
своды правил. У нас есть
We have
ГОСТы.
the rule books. We have the standards. And when I was researching this in the perspective of the possibility, so
новых
I'm
зданий
saying
и сооружений, я
that
имею в
the
виду,
building, construction of the building
дело
is
вот
supposed to be of the class A. If let's have an example, if there will be we're gonna build childcare somewhere in the farther regions, the building will be needed to repayment repairment for the next 50 years. And there will be a lot of losses through the heating system, and energy efficiency will be at the lower level. The main thing is not the construction itself. The construction is only 1% to up to 7% of the life cycle of the buildings. And the use of this building is more than 90% of its life cycle. So if you're gonna show the bigger, the better showing of this building, it will not be needed like up there in the north without the better experience of using this and construction of these buildings. And in the heating season, still work till this summer. Like I saw this snow even in summer, like June and August, even though I know that in November, there is snowing in July. The fourth aspect is the construction speed. Is one of the main factors of how the building is going to appear at the zone. And I even witnessed how the school was constructed with the bricks, and the construction cycle took up to 4 years, and it wasn't. I think it was nonsense. Oh, The methods of preparation of this building should short up the time. The fifth aspect is the logistics, and you're located in a zone where you have like double bases of the building. You have some additional pit stops, and the logistics up can take up to 3 to 4 months. Delivery is terrible, and there are special delivery times, and it's very expensive. It's not effective. So in the times, when Gazprom was trying to work on it, he wanted to uh, use the blue system of the delivery, but there is still no blimps in the north and the Arctic zone to this day. Of course, it takes up a lot of money. So the efficiency of the coefficiency of like the Moscow prices of the 69 at year 1969, uh, it took up only to 9% of extra cost. But in the Arctic zone, it takes up in up to 9 times price and goes up as it goes. And the sixth aspect is low weight, and the permafrost and the condition of the north can uh, can affect the buildings because of its uh, global warming and heating. I wrote an article on risks of exploration last year, and I said there that the losses can go up to uh, $1.5 million USD. So I I said that this is the sixth aspect, so it can make a new possibility of the low pressure on the continent. And the seventh aspect is the innovative materials and structures, composites, block structures. So as a and the life cycles is 4 times better than steel, and composites also be used in lower temperatures. I don't want to spend a lot of time on talking about these materials. So these materials, they should be they should be good. And the eighth aspect is enlarged assembly. It was used in the Soviet Union times, the delivery of the large tons of delivery. It was delivered by the river, and it's winter. Uh, and in winter times, they used all-terrain vehicles, and they were used to deliver it like this. And up to 40% of the investments were uh, cut because of the really good rating. And this method is used in the whole world, but we, the authors of this method, we do not use it anymore. So the enlarged assembly of technology is one of the most important factors of it. The ninth aspect is the choice of technologies. It was said uh, that the methods of the constructions on the full territory of Russia, starting in Murmansk and ending on Magadan or Chukotka. The tenth aspect is project management. I think we have some technical difficulties.
Связь плохая. Вас не слышно и не видно.
Алло, меня слышно, а то что-то
Да,
разъединилось.
появилось. Все
Да,
нормально.
разъединилось. Это связь такая. Пожалуйста, следующий слайд. Следующий слайд.
So in conclusion, I will say something else. I want to give you some information of the technologies. You can look it up on the screen on how can the efficiency can grow in of the construction of the buildings in the north. And of the technology of the construction of it. Technology of the construction of the house kits. And of everything else is the industrial construction and all other technologies that are presented in the Russian Federation to this day, presented by the Italian company that, so if we're talking about the necessity, our president talked about it earlier. As I know, in Yakutia, we so we need a lot of more investments of repairment of the money that repairment of the houses, and it we can count it as crazy money. And like as an example of uh, new houses is in the city, Norway, Michigan. There are 400,000, a three-story complex under one roof, about 4,000 square meters. That built that was built by the U.S. on the South Pole, and it's pretty similar to the city in Michigan. So on parliament hearings of the government state of Russian Federation, I explained the technologies and the prices and the speed of the construction. And on this table, uh, you can see the prices, and the prices are in the Moscow region. So the prices would be different in other regions, but this table shows it pretty good that we need to take in comment that it could be much more expensive in the regions, and we can see the difference. And we need to think about it and which technology we need to use. And technology of panel construction buildings. It was invented by the French people, and these are the technologies that were invented after the World War II, and it was necessary back then. But then our engineers also took that technology and built buildings like that on the whole territory of the Soviet Union. And around for 40 years, this technology is still not used, but we're still using it because we don't know better. We need to transform from something we got used to, primitive, to something new, and that we can be used better, that be better for the economy. I want to say that, in my opinion, we working on the Arctic zone for the next 100 years, at least. At least we need that time. The exploration of the Arctic zone will be the important factor of the development of this country because it's pretty hard to predict what's going to happen. But we know what we can do good. It's the mining of the natural resources, and we have one of the best numbers in the world. And maybe we can build rockets too. But everything else, we can't even get the better cars, vehicles. So this trend of the exploration, it should be economically friendly. In my opinion, we need to invent new methodics. The government should accept it. So we will not allow the ineffective and unnecessary So that was my report, dear organizers. So I really hope will add my ideas to the concluded resolution. Mm. And the question of the prices of the new technologies will should be the question every year. It should not be reviewed only by the specialists, but by all the people as well. Like some people do know this, but still, even when you talk about it, nobody knows. Like the miners got something to themselves, and other specialists got everything else. Thank you very much. So if you got any question for our speaker, oh, still there are panel buildings are still constructed in Yakutsk. I have a question. How the life cycle was determined, and we have uh, special methods of counting how the life cycle is counted, and it's already law accepted. The service life. But if we're talking about the unique buildings, so and the unique buildings should be up to 100 years, like the Ostankino television station, it should be up to 100 years in expectation. Yeah, let's highlight this report, but the main problem of the construction buildings in Arctic zone, uh, there is no infrastructures for it, and the low number of population is also the factor when we're analyzing uh, this topic. We had villages where the population is under 500 people. Uh, we need to think about the compatibility of the construction. So in, the northern people, they want to live in as a traditional, how the traditions were set. So uh, in this situation, we cannot talk about it at this time. So we need to bring up this question and talk about it. And this moment that were brought up today. So as we need to choose one constructive decision of the speed construction and how it's going to be set uh, on the government level, we need to create the new production because businessmen are not going to be spending money on this kind of construction. So the results of this summer wildfires showed us that we need to learn how to build fast. And it's really hard in short time. I want you to pay attention. So you brought up a really good argument, and It's one of the biggest arguments that we can find in the North, but the complex and living. So we need to count how the people will live in different cities if they want to move out. And it was the first factor. And now the second factor is what you said, that we need to highlight, we need to make business, private business and government agreements, and they need to work together. We can concentrate in between the government and the businesses, because government only is not effective at all times. Thank you very much. Uh, the next speaker will be Pasilsky Fyodor. He's the head of the department of the in the Northeastern Federal University of Irkutsk.
Hello, thank you. The topic of this discussion is well-being and life sustenance in climate change. That's why I have a report on ensuring safety of buildings and structures in Yakutia and in Yakutsk. Yakutsk is quite a large city, one of the largest cities in the north, and it's built on permafrost. And we know that Yakutsk has more or less good situation with buildings, but still we have some problems that we have to somehow face if we live in climate warming. So what's the main problem? Since the capital construction started in Yakutsk, Yakutsk became some kind of a testing site. And the requirements for frost resistance of concretes foundations only appeared in 1970s. After the start of the capital construction, only 25 years after that, the terms of reference and regulations were developed. That's why we had some problems with building failures. Let's look at what kinds of buildings we have in Yakutsk. We have so-called Khrushchev era houses. We have large prefabricated panel houses and prefabricated block houses and other types. So these are the years when these types of buildings were commissioned and how many. In Soviet times, we had very strict requirements as for service life of these buildings. Buildings with wooden floors had to serve for 50 years. Those were one of the first houses, and the term has already expired. And we'll have to do something with it. What other problems we have? The first houses with wooden floors, they are not very frost resistant and very low ventilated basement. And the brick structure is not very safe. Another type of building, they wanted to make something good, but in fact it didn't work as they thought. Again, the basement. The basement is quite low. Infrastructures are leaking, and the wear and tear affect this building significantly. Then there was the buildings dating back to 70s to 90s. These were also large prefabricated panel houses. And all of them have their own problems. But recently, the monolithic technology came. These houses are quite secure, and still they have some structural drawbacks. And another separate group of buildings are the buildings that were built on artificial sandbanks. The idea behind that was that the sandbanks would insulate permafrost and that it would protect permafrost from thawing, but on the contrary, what we see now is that it doesn't work that way. This permafrost seems to be melting even more under such artificial districts. Another problem with those artificial sand banks is that buildings were built on the plots where different types of ground were combined, which is not recommended. What is one of the key problems is the rigidity of buildings and their resistance to subsidence deformation. Here you can see those problem points that we have in different kinds of buildings. The problems include such as absence of monolithic grids, what do we have to do to ensure safety of these buildings? Technical documentation, monitoring, calculation, analysis, and everything else that has to be done in the conditions of climate change. For older houses, actually, we don't have any technical documentation. And with the newer buildings, it's more or less okay, although the factual designs do not always correspond to the typical or recommended terms of reference. That's why we cannot be sure at all times what was used exactly in one or other building. Another key problem for northern climates is the class of the concrete quality, especially for the bearing structures. Again, here we see that the class of concrete does not comply with the requirements based on the results of real-life tests that we have done. Another key aspect that we should look into is the reinforcement of the bearing elements. again, at some points, the solutions that were used when building the houses did not comply with the requirements. We had over 100 different failures, some of them quite serious, and 18 houses suffered major failures, but we didn't record any problems with the foundation instability due to permafrost melting. So either it didn't happen or we didn't record it. The main reasons of failures were cracking of the piles and foundations, decomposition and wear of concrete, low quality of concrete, and the destruction of brick structures. Especially, I would like to note that these low ventilated basements, this pile basements, cause a lot of problems, especially in the old houses. Recently, we had some more news about failures and cracks in the brick buildings of the older types. We also have a very important example of a more or less new house built on the artificial sandbank, and it has an inclination of 420 millimeters. And here you can see what the problem was. The damage is quite serious. We are using modeling, and we use quite robust software models. And here you can see the results for that building that subsided. And our results showed that the reason was that silty grounds, silty soils were under the building. And you can see how uneven the underlying ground was. These are materials about soils. It's a master's dissertation. The temperatures were not changing much, but there is a trend towards warming, although the mean temperature stays the same. Another disturbing information about the temperature monitoring holes near the houses. Unfortunately, not all of them function the way they should. So we don't have quality information for the temperatures of grounds under the buildings. We also have some information on uneven load of the pile foundations. Sometimes there are overloaded or underloaded sections. What is our solution? We have to get ready to climate warming. We have to face the present situation, and it's the life of peoples. And I think it is necessary to establish a computer modeling center that should be a unified center that would undertake calculations, requirements, monitoring. We have people, we have software, and we did this calculation modeling work at other facilities because we don't have enough hardware, because we have staff, we have human resources who are aware of what has to be done, they know how to do it, but we need state-of-the-art hardware to undertake all of this. And here you can see the numerical modeling of the thermal status of cells. We also developed a software for calculating the pile foundations designs. So what are the recommendations? To develop a Republic-wide program for ensuring safety of residential housing, to reduce the risks of failures due to permafrost degradation. We should establish outstanding geotechnical monitoring of buildings, especially in the artificial sandbanks. Number 3, inspect all the buildings with low ventilated basements, especially old buildings, and we have to retrofit them to comply with modern safety requirements. And of course we have to replace them step by step. We have to develop special rules for building on artificial banks. And as I mentioned, the Center for Computer Modeling would be a very good idea. Thank you. Do we have any questions to Fyodor?
Должны работать с тем, что имеем, я думаю.
We have to work with what we have.
Хорошо, спасибо. Но я думаю, что в рамках нашей площадки...
In the frameworks of our discussion platform, I think this question is not very relevant. It's a little bit out of our scope. Mr. Zhelezniak of the Melnikov Permafrost Institute says it's not our problems because it all depends on the piles, etc. But another key factor that affects these structures is water. It should have been snow, for example, but at some points with warming we have more water than snow. In Yakutsk, we lack some kind of a linking organ. For example, one agency is responsible for construction, and then the other agency is responsible for permafrost. But nobody is working and nobody is responsible at the level of foundations, the most important part. Because we have a lot of problems with waterlogging. The every year we get more and more water. So I think you should recommend to use this integrated, interdisciplinary approach. Then you have to combine your efforts at the level of managing water, waterlogging, water drainage in Yakutsk. Because I think water drainage is the key problem for the city of Yakutsk. But we seem to just ignore this major problem. And it is crucial for the developers and the permafrost scientists. There are a lot of new urbanization projects that do not correspond to the requirements of the integral development of the city. Because in fact Yakutsk is such a unique place. We don't have same conditions anywhere in the world, and it would be a good idea to just use this opportunity and work together and test, experiment. Yes, thank you for these interesting ideas. Of course, we would have had a discussion, a more substantial one, if we had representatives of the city administration. And what the director of Permafrost Institute says, that deconstruction doesn't have to do with permafrost degradation. We have to think about it, because yes, waterlogging is also important factor. Right now, in about 50,000 people in Yakutsk live in the houses that might be not safe. That's why the relocation program should be one of our priorities. And waterlogging problem is also in every mayor's priority program. We've been trying to fight it for decades. And unfortunately, I think the only solution is the technical drainage using equipment. What about high-storied buildings? How many floors should building have? Well, it depends on the economy. Every developer wants to get as high as possible. And today, from the safety point of view, we are complying with everything. But regarding the human relations and social environment, yes, maybe high rises are not the best solution. Thank you, and we go to the next speaker. It's Mr. Mikhail Rabinovich, Associate Professor of the Department of Soil Mechanics, MGSU.
Today, I want to remind you that I have co-author. Yes, Chunyuk Dmitry. He is the head of the department at the National Research Moscow State Construction University. And I want to highlight
Вот это переключается отсюда, да? Да, вот вперед сюда. Всё понял. Ну, проблема климата, которая...
the climate problem and the construction problem. It starts from the climate because climate is not permanent. And all the climate and temperatures are accepted while the construction is only based on the real situation. And the statistics are renewed by every 50 years. So even in a span of 20, 30 years, you can even feel the changes. And on a global scale, when you have this kind of climatic references of the permafrost, so the permafrost is now sounds negative because it was all right for the past 1,000 years. And we started only like for 100 years to started to construct the buildings on the Arctic zone. So for popularization of this question, we need to highlight that the the idea of construction of the buildings is the Soviet scientist achievement, and it's the work of the scientists of the 60s and 70s, and we're still using it to this day and in the world. So we were never out of the picture of the construction world stage. And even for us, the 60% of our country where we see that people live there. And if we're gonna compare the territory of Russian Federation, so imagine city Vorkuta and city Yakutsk. Vorkuta has abandoned neighborhoods. It's not used, and you can see it like the buildings are abandoned. And Yakutsk has a lot of new buildings, and the perspective is pretty bright. So we need to make sure that this existing collective fund is still gonna be strong, and we need to highlight this perspective of it too. and the mystery of the global warming and warming of the permafrost and the create climate has created this permafrost, and now uh, because of the utilization and distillation, the data on climatology is differed in the context of speed, and the Arctic zone with watching much more faster climate change and natural anomalies. And on the second report of the hydro monitoring of Russian Federation, there were predictions of how the Russia will be formed on the territorial soil. And there are around 100 systematical ISIS. There are three types of it: negative, positive, and neutral. And it will be good for us. And we choosing the most harsh conditions to construct the building. If we're gonna look it up as in the negative side, then there will be a reason to construct the building in there. So in the 100 years, we are thinking of global warming, that the temperature is gonna rise, and all the territories that are connected to the Northern Sea. These territories are protected with the president's allowance, and the climate is different there. So this difference of the tempo of temperature rising, it's in Russia, it's 2 times faster than the rest of the world. And we are located in the intensive territory on the territory of the intensive climate change. And we're gonna know for sure, like in 50 years, when we're gonna have enough data to research. So we needed to construct the buildings, so we can be sure in it tomorrow. So the most intensive warming season is spring. So the soil of the main differences between the soils and the different lands. We taking the difference between them as the basis, where we getting the most cold and the most warm temperature. So as we thinking, it's August, September. At this time, we expecting the cold weather as the basis of the constructions. We still having a heating bit. here we need the new technologies. The most elementary thing. So that's the story of the uh, permafrost researching, thinking about it, and the experience of the construction and the capital construction. The indigenous people, the native buildings were here. It was used, and it was using the permafrost benefits, like the water flow in the springtime when the quality of the water is decreasing. So there are a lot of things that answers questions which we don't know yet. We have a lot of experience, but we're not talking enough about it. And there was a question before about the how many stories a building should have. Everybody wants to live in a stone house, but we cannot forget about the wooden houses. And you can remember the Lermontov did the wooden houses. They weren't used much more bigger than the life cycles they had. And as we have the practice from the many years of experience, we had get two principles. And we allow them to destroy and the melting of this territory. It had an economical question. I was comparing it to Vorkuta, and Yakutsk is grown. And there was a question about the population of Yakutsk city. And now you can see the territory of the 1/3 of the population of Republic is located in Yakutsk. And if we still thinking about the population, and when we're talking about the global thinking of this capital construction, Yakutsk should be in a bigger positions because it's a different situation with the house kits. For Yakutsk, it's not allowed, and you can see the Arctic part. And it's to the question of using the experience of the native people. So for the last years, we had a lot of changes. We had one ST. So we need to say that the one specification was around only one fundament, and it's really not that. it's really special and it has its own moments. What about the SP? About the last second half of the last year, we got a new structure of SP. We don't have only SP25, we have SP4 now. It's as Ministry of Construction requested. It's the best benefits of the construction of buildings on permafrost territory. And the main thing that we have uh, the standards of the exploitation of these buildings. I don't say them they are perfect. Uh, we only have experience with SP25, but another one is the new experience one. And if we have a bucket to that always fills and it fills only while it can, we need to see. Uh, Sadly, we do not give enough attention to the vision of the building. We only build it and sell it. And we need to monitor the status of the building, especially in the context of the climate change. It's one of the most important parts. And and I want to, in conclusions, highlight two things. First of all, is owners of the services of exploitation of the buildings, they will never get the good system to monitor the status of the building, and it doesn't have much sense to it. It should be showed differently, and it's one of the main criteria to grade the status of the lives of the buildings. And secondly, we need a absolutely new way to count the northern parameters. It shouldn't be a stationary grade. We should have perspective dynamic situation, and it's for the climatologists and meteo services. They need to give us more things on the climate change, or in the dynamics of the counting dynamics, and all of this data we need them in the base, and how we need to uh, get the prognosis of them. And in this list of their buildings, how many are at default with the basis, and the international experience shows that 99% of all the crashes of the constructions first two options are always the fundament, because it's hidden from the eye. If we not monitor it, it's not the wall that has a crack. First thing that shows that building is already bad, that the doors and windows are shutting badly. and when there are 150 apartments in a building, it'd be pretty hard. It's something that not only owners should do, but the city itself. We have big resources, so in principle, as a whole, you can see it. The service of the monitoring of the status of the building and the standards of the normalizing of the climate things in the north. These are the two things that we need right now. So we could have a good answer to this question. So if it's not crashing, then it's not only not it's good. It doesn't mean that it's good. So how much money did you invest in the building? How much thought was put in it? We had it since the last generation, from the last generation, the construction, and we are proud of them. But in how many times did we have those buildings that were destroyed because of it? And we have answers, the results only from the buildings that are in a good status right now. And right now the process is still going. And we did said it before that the platform is not good for the construction. So the will of the investor is one of the main reasons, and if he does not invest enough money into fundament of this building, if he uh, really cheap on it, and here uh, is the big problem is hidden in there. Thank you. We talked about it with Vera Alexeyevna about the different soils. We concluded that if we won't have any laws this on a governmental level, so we always need to have temperature control. So it's a really important thing for us because the construction, I always said to the government, uh, we already know how to build, but we don't know how to use. So we need to allow this, we need to make it safe also. And about the rule book, it says that we have biotechnological monitoring. But from the Soviet times, a lot of time passed. It got into the private hands. And if we are seeing about the residential area, nobody watching the status of the building. And you can look up the agreement uh, between the resident and the service company, and it only says about the heating, the water, and the electricity, and nothing else. And we, as citizens, we are not really looking it up into the too deep. Um, yeah, the main thing is we need to pay less if we're talking to them. And so the temperature tubes, uh, it should be allowed as a device to measure the temperature. So we could take it at any time and measure the temperature. So to this day, uh, through the senators that we have in governmental council, that we need to put it into the federal law, and we have a lot of work up ahead. And that assuring us to have safe, it has to be safe. So that's why Mikhail Vladimirovich said about that talking about the exploitation using of the technical safety of the using of the building. This chapter is not worked through, and it because the service company should know what they doing. Why did this chapter came in? Because for the living for the residential apartments we have standards about to other buildings like social ones like for buildings and schools and everything, and they don't have the rule book on using, but the rule book of the federal level law it has this thing, and we're talking about this question a lot with the government representatives, and a lot of talk. It was talked about the ministers, and even Putin talked about it, and it really concerns the northern regions, and even on the level of our government, we have the question how to measure the temperature of the soil. It shouldn't be only be laid on the private owners, private companies. It should be a special system. So we have a lot of questions. There is a lot of work up ahead, and thank you for putting my remark in. So at the today we working with discussing it. We need to have the resolutions way, um, and the government doesn't have a lot of money to give, but we still got problems. Well, about the permafrost research, there was some new questions. Didn't you hear about it? I heard about, but there was a lot of different opinions. So right now we were talking about the, the presenters, the speakers today. So the meteor station should have more information about it. And as we have do not have enough of meteor stations, then it should be as in a rule book. And that says a lot that we need to work on the system, because if we don't have any information, so that's the complexity of these questions that we need to work with, like the projection of the buildings. So to discuss the rule book of the using, uh, and this period is already passed.
But if this regulation has to do with changing the minimal tariff that exists for communal services, as soon as we came to the change of prices, it was just omitted right away. We didn't even discuss it because the minimal tariff should stay the same. But how? If it's the same in Tver, for example, in central Russia, and in Yakutsk, it's nonsense. But we didn't manage to anyhow discuss it. So if it's like this, it either stays like this or it is or it will be abandoned. A short question. First of all, I'd like to remind our colleagues that there was a decision on creation of monitoring system in the Arctic zone, and it will be functioning. It happened in September, so we're just in at the start. We have to identify the regions, types, and they really want to install 129 stations of monitoring permafrost in Russia. But I also want to underline that Mr. Rabinovich mentioned that there are some problems, but last year I wrote a letter to the government of Russia that we have to undertake monitoring in the far north, especially in the hazardous facilities, especially after the oil spillage in Norilsk, because I don't think it was fair that they had to pay just a very small fine. While BP, for example, in the same situation, had to pay billions of dollars. So I would like to include in our resolution the need to monitor not only social facilities but also hazardous facilities, because we see there are problems and the damage is huge. And also you mentioned that high rises from starting from 5 to 6 stories, that they are being deformed. And you said that there was no need to construct prefabricated panel houses in Yakutsk. I don't think you have enough expertise to say that. Thank you. We'll go further, and we have here Alexander Blinov, the head of the Normative and Technical Information Department of Nord LLC. Thank you for inviting us today. And I would like to tell you about fire safety of timber constructions when building or repairing buildings in the far north. Can you see my presentation? Yes. Great. So why is this topic relevant? First of all, there are requirements for fire safety and for fire retardants. This year, the Sakha Republic suffered massive wildfires. We've seen it on the internet. The fires are endangering communities, and we have to ensure safety of people, including at building homes or repairing homes. That is why if we look into the special requirements for fire safety in the far north, first of all, there are state standards. This one is our Bible for fire proofing the timber, and there is an item in this standard which says the lifetime of fireproofing, if it's intended for over 1 year, we have to make tests for the wear, and if there are no such tests done, it means that your fire retardant is only good for 1 year, and every year you will have to reapply it. But if your lifetime is like 7 to 10 years, whatever, the standard says that you have to prove this using fast tests, climatic tests. So a fire retardant, for example, should have 2 protocols from an accredited certified laboratory. First one is the speed test, climatic fast test, and the other one, the proof of fire safety properties after the fast test. So these fast climatic tests of fire retardants are done as per the other state standard, and this standard says that in the far north there are 3 special cases of operation. First one, under open sky, number 2, under some roof, and number 3, unheated premises like attic. And using fire retardants in far north, we have to look and make sure that the manufacturer the service life of their substances in either of the 3 conditions as per the state standard. So this was my first point, and the second one has to do more with capital repair, and it is very relevant for our country. So when we repair roof, it is recommended to do it at temperatures below 0. Why? Because at above 0 temperatures it may rain, and when we disassemble the roof, you will just flood your upper stories. and the materials should be used that can be operated and installed or applied, including at below zero temperatures. And us, as one of the leaders of producing fireproofing substances, we have some solutions for cold climates as well. So our Pirilux series is that this has components that are similar to the components of timber, and also it crystallizes at -16. So above -15 you can just apply it without any preparation. You can use it in the attics even without roof, which is really helpful. So what does it give you? So it retards fire, it makes the timber fireproof, it's also an antiseptic substance, and it also prevents cracking, conserves the surface, and stops the wear and tear. So if you apply this kind of substance, you prolong your service life of your timber structure. But as I mentioned, we have to provide certain certifications through speed climatic tests. For these substances, we have such certifications. For the far north, in the open air, we have a certificate for 5 years. And in the conditions number 3, unheated premises, like attics, we have a certification up to 5 years of service life in the far north. On the slide, it says up to 16 years, but it's in more moderate climates. And these are the first pages of those protocols. And when you fireproof your structures, you have to make sure that you have these protocols, whichever substance you use. So how the modern substances act? On the right, you can see a regular fire retardant. Since ancient times, retardants were mineral water solutions, and water evaporates and minerals stay in the timber, which stops fire. But they have a certain drawback. It's salt. Salt is absorbing water, and salt will be efflorescing on the surface, and also it's water soluble. So for those regions where we have challenging, harsh continental climates and short summers, where there are a lot of rains, we recommend substances consisting of timber-friendly components, where the components interact with celluloses and lignin, modify them, and transform the timber and fireproof it. On this slide, these are the examples of the regular standard mineral salt fire retardants used. You can see these white spots that start forming on the surface in the autumn, again you have troubles with painting when you have this surface formations. These is how our fire retardants work, not only our but any fire retardants. And these are roof structures of a cafe. There was a fire from electric network, and they have soft roofing, although it's a violation of rules. And despite the fire, after 60 minutes, the fire was put out and they disassembled the roof, and you can see the structures have just charred a bit, and after cleaning and recoating them with fire retardant, you can continue using them. There are also more economic substances. They are called hybrid fire retardants. They are a little bit less effective, but they're also used, especially in those places where you don't need any special decorations. For example, attics. Hybrid means it has both mineral components that can also help, but their percentage is less. And plus this special timber-friendly components. In our series of products, we have biopyrene ozone, and this life service certificate for northern conditions should be there, and we have them. As I mentioned, hybrid solutions can be used in inside the attic, and this is the comparison of our products without mineral components and with mineral components, hybrid components. Both of these substances have certifications. Can you please go on to the summary? But it's just an example. I just want to explain that hybrid substances can't be used at below 0 temperatures. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Yes, it's a very important aspect. Annually, we lose a lot of wooden houses and we lose lives, which is a tragedy. Please, you could have indicated your website where we could find all the information. NPO Nord, you just Google it and you can find it. Okay, thank you. Next speaker, Natalia Semyonova. We have switcher here.
Experience in the construction of surface slab foundation on soils of seasoning towing compacted by mechanical ramming permafrost conditions. So on the construction of the fundament and the quality for the low-story buildings and for the big-story buildings. There was a lot of different foundations for it. And right now, private constructors uh, practice it. And you can see the examples on this slide. The stick foundation are rammed in lower than the in the ground. So our institute since the 1998 paid attention to on the possibility of using this slab foundation. We tested on lower foundations in regular temperature, and last year we did some tests with the mechanical ramming. So in 2021 we tested to ram the foundation by the request from Agroprom when the reconstruction of the fence, we rammed the foundation under the building in 2015. The construction, we made the fundament. Well, on this slide you can see the formation of this layered system of them sticks of ramps. So the hardening is going on this way, and here on the picture you can see the maximum clubbing. And it's actually this the soil can be destructed from the level layers. And the foundation and can be taken on a status, and the main preferences are the definition of the weight of ramming and the height and how deep it goes. The mass of ramming, it goes into this formula that is showed on this slide. And how deep it shows. But not only that, we taking the width of this layer, and with this, and we analyzed ramming in 1999 2000, so we can see how big is and how deep is uh, it goes without touching the permafrost, and ramming of this water cleaning station in Yakutsk, and we worked on it besides the water fence, and we used it later, and we made it. And right now on this platform, you can see that the station was built. They started using it in 2018 on a slab surface foundation and with the sand foundation tool. And with the testing of geodesical monitoring in August of 2018 showed that the size of it is less than the normal size. And um, the technical characteristic of the dry sand in the melting season uh, it goes with the percentages like 25 and 75. With it, if it's deeper, then it's thicker. I mean, no, it's not thicker. And the foundation work also tested, and we I got the results that since the 2001, uh, that the thickness is it goes down. So the foundation was under the pressure, and all of this 15 years, we had the steel concrete materials. It was around 1 meter, so the pressure was pretty good. And in 2001, on this kind of for the water fence, for the reservoirs, and we made the foundation thicker. And right now, this building is under our monitoring. Till now, this building does not have any lacks, no defects, no deformations. It has the system of the cold pipes, and the building was built on the first principle. The technical preferences of superheat in melting seasons, and it goes with the percentages of 24 and 1.7, and the results of natural experimental showed that the mechanical thickening goes with the layers, and the possibility of using the used layer for the main foundation, and this created this big big slab surface, and you can use your own foundation if you need to. And why we did it, scientific uh, with scientific reward. We patented it. It's a new method of the fundament in permafrost was developed, and with the prices in 2005, the prices were dropped for the constructors. So with the Yakutsk State Design and Research Institute of Construction, we, as a result of the work in 1999, for the thickening of the foundation and the foundations. And in conclusion, I want to say that it was showed that the thick foundations are on the first principle, and secondly, the technology of the thickening of the foundation was done, and thirdly, we showed economical logic to use it. So I want to say that this kind of foundations decreasing the price. It's economically smart. It's ecologically good because we're not destroying anything, and it helps with the underwater. The range of using it is wide, and thank you for your attention. And who has questions? So we go to the last speaker. It's me, and the question is, and with this theme, I already presented it a couple of times, so let me be quick.
Just a second. I have already used this presentation. So it's insulation, thermal insulation of frame monolithic buildings. Problems and solutions. And we've mentioned the construction of multi-storied buildings, and in October of this year, the total area of these multi-storied buildings was over 275,000 square meters. And the majority of them are being built in Yakutsk. Of course, these are apartment blocks. These are the number of stories. Right now, we are building from 13 to 17 stories. In order to build a 16-story building, we use so-called frame monolithic technology. 90% of the buildings are constructed using this technology. And of course, we are using ventilated facades or so-called wet facade. But recently we been using ventilated facades because wet facades didn't prove to be good for Yakutsk. And you all know that we have requirements in Yakutia. We have quite a long heating season, and we have high requirements for insulation and walling. So what are our main problems? We monitor different buildings, we inspect them, and in the modern apartment blocks, we have a lot of problems on the first 2 floors, especially the basement floor. The links are the weakest points, columns, basement floor contacts. We have 12-storied, 16-storied buildings, and we see weak points where columns are mostly. And there is this one building that we inspected. So these are outer columns where the inner temperature you can see it's very hot, almost 25, while it's minus 45 outside, but still the temperature at contact is only 6.6 degrees. And we did some calculations because there are a lot of software for temperature calculations. We're using Heat3D, Swedish software, where we take into account not only the walling, but also the outer, the grillage. For example, the grillage for 4 columns, even according to calculations, the temperature in the corner makes 5.49 at minimum. So even at designing stage, we allow it to be lower than required. And so-called outer corner is the most problematic point. Sometimes it's almost 0. Again, we calculated, and the heat loss occurs through columns and massive grillage. We have cold bridges there, so the temperature is only 7 degrees, and you can see the distribution very clearly. Again, the basement floor, the flooring of that comes first, and we see that in balconies we use perforation, but sometimes it's only done along the longer side of it, and as a result we see lower temperatures in these corners. The temperature there was minus 7 degrees. And again, the calculation, this is ideal conditions with insulation very close to where it should be. It's still 6 degrees. You see perforation along the longer side, but along the short side you see a lot of impact from cold bridges. And the temperature seam, so-called double inner wall. Recently, they also installed insulation in 2 meters from outer wall. But still we have the temperature of 4.4 degrees in the corner, which is still below the dew point. And there is a standard solution. We used smaller concrete stones. And you can see their width, thickness. But you know that polystyrol is not always attached very closely to the walling because walls are not even. That's why they use isover. And we use regular polystyrol foam slabs. And the temperature here, again, in ideal conditions, is only 9 degrees, which means that we already design the corners to have temperature below dew point. And this is the part of the inner wall. So why do we have these problems? First of all, these are 3D cold bridges. These are grillages, columns, floor slabs, and small scale building blocks. And the last and very interesting reason is that high infiltration of air in winter, because different pressure creates higher infiltration. So these are the differences between inner and outer pressure of air. At -10 is red, and at -52 is shown in blue for a 16-story building. You see that we have double infiltration for a 16-storied house compared to a 9-storied building. That's a huge difference. And this pressure can be compared to, for example, in the region in Moscow, it would have been a 100-storied building. That would give you the same pressure difference. So what are the solutions? Why not isolate outer walling from inner structures? For example, let's use heat-efficient beam. The temperature here rises and it is immediately higher than dew point. It's 14 degrees. Another interesting thing is the distance from inner corner to the line with a 0 temperature. In typical solutions, it's only 80 millimeters. It's just right under your floor. Under your evening layer of the floor, as soon as there are errors at construction stage, you have 0 temperature in your floor. Other solution is the part of outer walling with thermal break made of some light blocks, for example polystyrol concrete. Here these blocks are forming kind of a ladder to improve the insulation. Here the same, but two thermal blocks are used. And the most vulnerable point, the corner. In typical designs, we have this cold bridge at -52. The minimal temperature there will be below 0. But still, we allow this. We put it in our designs. Of course, there will be water condensating there. Okay, we do a thermal break there using light blocks. Still, the temperature won't be much higher because there are grillages which are very powerful cold bridges. Again, here a part of the inner wall, if we install a thermal break block under this wall, it brings your temperature up. Again, with the regular solution, you get 14 degrees, but if you use this thermal break, your 0 temperature line goes much deeper. These two solutions were offered to developers. Some of them are actually using it now. We are holding temperature experiments. In winter, we are going to test the results in a real house. We're installing special equipment there. And we'll check the temperature in many places in real time. This is how our solutions look in real life. The developer called Sette. They're using it at several houses. Grillages. Some people suggest to use outer insulation. Let's insulate our grillage from outside. Although inside the insulation of the basement flooring is quite thick, but it won't bring you any effect. It will raise your temperature maybe at 0.1 degrees. One of the companies building houses in Zhatai, they made 300 millimeters installation outside, and they didn't have any effect. And this is the grillage of the outer edge of the column. This is really complicated. It's the most important part of a frame monolithic building. You know that we are building right now a huge facility, the Arctic Center. They used the double insulation of the slab. the basement floor slab, they insulated it twice, but maybe that is too expensive to be used widely. And our solution is to use a thermal insertion between grillage and the floor slab. Of course, in this case, we get higher temperature. Here we have some standard inner insulation of the basement flooring, and we only have this thermal insertion, and we already have 9.9 degrees. And the distance from the inner corner, it's not changed much, from 90 to 107. It's the distance from inner circle to the line with the inner corner to the line with the zero temperature. But if we make the outer insulation of the entire basement floor slab, you get this distance to 250. So probably the most efficient way to isolate it is to use insulation below the basement flooring, and plus a thermal insertion. When Canadians were building the first the old airport, they used only outer insulation everywhere. They didn't use thermal breaks anywhere. And the minimal temperature is quite good here, and this distance is as much as 250. So it seems like an effective solution, but we have to find ways to effectively insulate the basement floor from below. These are the this is the thermal insertion between grillage and the floor slab. Although we have quite low temperature, but still, if we use another kind of this insulation, again using insulation from below, we get a higher temperature. And the last slide, when we inspected buildings, we noticed that in outer corners of any building there are problems, and I was thinking, why would that be? And when we looked at the 5-10-year-old buildings, we found out that wind protecting film is just destroyed. The insulation film can just start detaching. And it just gives you a wide open hole, and your corners lose their insulation. But maybe we should use some polymer net or metal net to help this insulation films to adhere to the surface. Or maybe we should insert a monolithic corner element, and insert it there. Probably that would also be a good solution. Another solution that construction workers might not like, in winter, when it's below 40, you use your heat visor, you can see every block. And you can see that heat insulation is not located close enough to the building. So maybe the first 2 floors should first, the walls should first be covered, and only then the insulation should be attached. Any questions? Question from Olga Matveyeva. What's about thermal break? How rigid are those units? I offered it a solution as a beamless solution. Also, we could use vertical reinforcement along the perimeter, some kind of a belt in the grillage. Another question. What insulation you recommend for the basement flooring? Probably extruded polystyrol and then mineral plate. So 2 layers, yes. Is it fire safe? And the thickness of those mineral plates can be less. Yes. It will be more expensive, of course, but if you want to do something good, you have to pay. When I was in Germany, I was so surprised when it was -10 projected temperature. The outer insulation of was equal. The thickness of thermal insulation was equal to the thickness of the wall itself. Another thing that I noticed this year, under the balcony plates, there is some subsidence and moving, and you get some cracks. After 5 years of operation at one of the houses, Rockwell, for example, mineral plate is in a beautiful condition itself, but there are now cracks between the plates, the insulation, and you just get this open space. You mean the console balconies? No, any balconies. Thank you. Yes, please. My name is Avgusta Marfusalova, the member of Public Council, and I'm the chair on the Commission of Development of Arctic Territories. And together with Alexander Kugaevsky, I'm the member of Public Council for Development of Arctic Zone. And over the last 3 years, Russia is turning towards Arctic, right? And right now it has 2 directions. First of all, oil extractors, miners, they can go and develop the territories with their own money and with their own shift camps. We see it in Ustyansky district, in Lower Kolyma River. And the second aspect of our policy, it should be more global. We should somehow preserve indigenous peoples in those territories, to keep people there. Otherwise, somebody else will come to those lands if they're empty. In Ustyansky district, the population dropped dramatically. I worked in Abysky district, and we had a state-run program of socio-economic development of those Arctic districts, and I came there in any one of these communities. There were no schools and no cultural center, but thanks to that program and thanks to mobile equipment fleets, they managed to construct social facilities in quite a short period of time when they needed it. And recently we realized that for 30 years we haven't built any facilities in the Arctic district's capital, social facilities. Almost no were built. That's why this discussion was interesting for me, and I ask all of you and all of those who are listening online, at the meetings of the government with the population, the issues of housing, of constructions are always very burning in the Arctic. That's why I have this mission to start doing something. Probably in January we must have the public hearings. We're not sure about the format, but we'll be discussing capital construction in Arctic districts and ways to somehow revive it. Although the head of the Republic gave an assignment to develop a concept of reviving construction domain in the Sakha Republic. We lost a lot of construction capacity. It all moved to private domain, and the Arctic, there is no system, there is no control over construction domain. And public plays a key part in this, and I realized that while I was working in this public chamber. At the beginning I didn't understand it, but with Mr. Alexander Kugaevsky, the year before last, we raised this issue at the federal level about a northern supply of goods. There was a huge scandal here, and since then we've witnessed some good changes. And now we see a more active delivery of goods to the north, and the mentality of the people also has changed. You probably seen Alenyovsky district. They are building very nice cultural centers. In some regions they started using local materials to produce local construction materials. The same we see in Lower Kolyma region. They are starting to change people there. We have to come up with some common policies and produce some recommendations for the authorities, because without state investment especially a social infrastructure, we can't do it. Am I right? So please, everyone who has to deal with construction, first of all, we want some opinions and ideas from you, because we want to reach to federal level, and it's a republic-wide level as well, regarding developers themselves and the municipal authorities. I hope many people will hear us and will work together, otherwise it's very hard. We know Ivan Gorokhov very well. He's our graduate, first of all, and he's very passionate for reviving capital construction in northern districts. Yes, we know that. About your last presentation, if the first 2 floors we just can make it by pouring concrete, monolithic, then we won't have any problems. Do we have such experience in Yakutsk? Yes, we have such experience. A house on Kirova Street, all walls are monolithic there, and people call this house Titanic. You know this house, near the civil registry. Of course, developers want to save their money. They won't use this technology. Okay. So what if we use so-called 3D construction? Yes, but it's good for smaller houses. You need special solution for that. We don't have enough technical capacities. But for private houses, yes, why not? I also want to ask a question. Hello? I wanted to ask 2 questions. A very good report by Fyodor Poselsky, very scientifically substantiated, about construction in District 202 on the artificial sandbank, and we're facing some problems already, but we continue to build another district, 203. What is your opinion? Is it a good thing? The science tells us that, for example, you can't build there, but the developers do build. The second question to Mikhail. He mentioned the operation of buildings and structures. We should improve services. And we in our institute, we have a special academic construction. And last year we had to close that program. But that would be a good source of personnel for the development of construction. Will we somehow solve this? Okay, what about our artificial sandbanks? No, we don't say that we prohibit to build there. No, we just have to keep to the rules and regulations. like using knowing the type of ground you're building on. And the second question, as the chair of the department, I will answer. We are recruiting students in construction, the basic academic program of construction. But if we launch a new profile within this basic program, yes, why not? I think we will be able to launch this discipline again. Not discipline, but can I add about districts 202 and 203 using artificial sand plots? In fact, experience shows that it's quite effective. The other thing is that at the local specific facilities, we've seen some failures. And please don't overestimate the damage. There are no deconstructions. There are no like hazardous deformations. There were some damages where there was one kindergarten under which there was a vast leakage which raised the temperature of grounds. To our minds, everything there has to do with leakages. Maybe Fyodor, I will maybe oppose Fyodor. Maybe it's not silt. I think it's more sand under those buildings. But the main deformation occurs where we have the key infrastructure units that may leak, and the infrastructure systems that were not repaired for a long time. So I think the problems have to do with service and operation. In District 202, this district withstood 2 large floods. If there is service and maintenance done properly. So it was not a very correct question, Mr. Kontorusov, because you are an expert. So we can't just throw words like that. But we need to develop some regulations and requirements to buildings constructed on artificial sandbanks. About the reasons for deformation. There is some movement, yes, there are some movements along the infrastructure networks, but not only there. So I still insist that the main reason is the silty grounds, because they had to be removed when they were building this bank, but they didn't. Okay, we can discuss it further in person later. Yes, because it's very interesting when we start assessing and analyzing the technical condition of the buildings. Of course, we'll use your results as well. Thank you. We have looked into just some aspects of building in the Arctic conditions, but still the work is always ongoing. And we will see each other on other platforms, venues, and we will discuss construction problems in the Arctic at a separate venue. And of course, our Ministry of Construction, please, you should provide separate funding for research and development, because we had to I've been witnessing a lot of issues as ventilation in apartment blocks haven't been solved. So the ventilation for the solutions are the same for 9 stories or 16 stories. And about construction in the Arctic, especially the optimization, these are very important problems, but Arctic districts are now very interested in there is a lot of population outflow from those districts. And in order to develop the North, we need good teachers, doctors, etc. But people of those professions won't go there if you don't provide good conditions for them. So that is a problem for all of us. And again, the Ministry for Development of Arctic of the Sakha Republic to organize maybe a separate event to gather all experienced engineers and to come up with some recommendations or standards for Arctic districts to find the best types of structures, etc. We will be finishing at this point. You can send your comments to me. You know my email. Alexander Popov is responsible for that. You can send your comments to him, and we will include it in the final document of the Northern Sustainable Development Forum. Thank you very much. Good luck to all of you. Goodbye.